man's eyes were glued on mine as he started walking toward my gaze. I froze. I couldn't move. Hey guys, welcome back to a chaotic commentary. Today we're going to be looking at some true scary stories. Let's get into it. Story number 1. A child makes eye contact with a murderer. I recently shared this story the first time in a True Scary Stories group on Facebook. I got a lot of feedback from people who lived in the same town I did when this event happened. It felt good to finally share my experience. Shortly after posting, a woman contacted me and physically threatened me and my family if I wrote about him again. She believes him innocent, etc. It spooked me. I took my story down. I don't need weirdos like her in my life. I've since done some thinking about this and wanted to post my story again somewhere anonymously. It's my experience and I'm not going to let some crazy child killer dater bitch scare me, so here it is. I originally thought this incident happened in January of 1984. I now realize it was probably later in 1983. I was 8 years old and lived in Aurora, Colorado, a suburb southeast of Denver, Colorado. We lived in a brand new subdivision and I loved it. Our house was busy. I had 3 older sisters, an older brother, a grandmother, and my mom living in our home at the time. My 10-year-old sister and I shared a bedroom on the main floor. Our house was a ranch style. I loved this room. My twin bed was pushed up against the wall that had a window that faced our backyard. I like to push the curtains aside at night and perch my elbows on the windowsill and look outside. The window was elevated but not so high that I couldn't see into the yard easily. My older sister shared the room next to us and my grandmother was in a large room across a small hallway from us. My mother had a finished bedroom all the way downstairs in the basement. My brother had the rest of the basement. He was 16 years old at the time and had a lot of friends that were always coming and going. I remember our house always being full of guests. We had a super cold spell hit us that week. It was super icy out and my sister and I had been playing in the backyard. Our backyard had not yet been enclosed with a fence. We had these circular snow sleds that we would stand on and glide across the slick parts of the grass. We weren't good at putting our outdoor toys away and had left them strewn across the lawn. That night, something woke me out of a sound sleep. I thought about getting up and going downstairs to sleep with my mother. I did this from time to time and she and I were really close. Then I heard a noise outside my window. It sounded like someone was slowly walking across the snow in the backyard. I could hear the frozen grass crunching under their feet. I then heard someone say shit, or another explicit word, and something clink. I perched up out of my bed and moved my curtain aside and looked out the window. You brave. I think I originally thought I would see my brother or one of his friends out there. He often came in late at night past curfew and usually snuck through the backyard into an open basement window. I remember thinking that he shouldn't be doing this on a school night and I was going to tell mother in the morning that he woke me up. It wasn't my brother. I saw a young man probably in his early 20s that I didn't recognize. I made eye contact with him and then quickly scanned the rest of the yard for my brother. I didn't see him anywhere. I was going to move away from the window, but the man's eyes were glued on mine as he started walking toward my gaze. I froze. I couldn't move. He came as close as he could to the glass. He smiled at me. It was an eerie smile. It was an, oh look, you caught me doing something I shouldn't be doing kind of smile. I remember he had crystal blue eyes, almost gray. Something about his expression was not right. It took me a few seconds to realize I was feeling fear. He was not a friend of my brother's, nor supposed to be in our yard at that time of night. I panicked and jumped off my bed and quickly ran downstairs to tell my mother. Once I got to the basement, I saw that my brother was sound asleep in his bed as well. This scared me more as I knew now for sure that this man in our yard was most likely not a friend of my brother's. My mom calmed me down, came upstairs and turned the light on outside and looked into the yard from the sliding glass door windows. She didn't see anyone. I remember her not making a big deal out of it and I ended up sleeping in the basement bedroom with her the rest of the night. I didn't sleep well. I wondered why that man was in our yard and where he went. I remember feeling scared he might come back. I don't know the exact timeline, but I am guessing it was a few weeks later that a family a few streets over from us were murdered in the middle of the night by an intruder with a hammer and a knife. The father, mother, and 7-year-old daughter were killed, and a 3-year-old daughter was left for dead, but miraculously survived. This crime sent our entire community over edge. The police did not seem to know who had done this horrible thing or why. All we knew was that the hammer killer probably chose their house at random, came in through an open garage door. No one in my family mentioned to me the man I saw in our yard again. I asked my mother about it years later and she tensed up. The hammer killer case went cold and the community moved on as people do. I moved further south to a different side of Denver. I never forgot that man in my yard, though, and always felt he might have been the same man who murdered that family. As years went by, more information came out and they linked the murder of the family to a vicious murder and SA of a woman in another community, Lakewood, as well. They also linked him to a savage attack on a couple and flight attendant in Aurora as well through DNA. He was a serial predator and he was active in our community that whole time. Fast forward to 2019 and I am watching the news. I can't believe it. They have solved the cold case of that family's murder from 1984 as well as the other attacks. They flashed a picture of the suspect across the screen and my heart stops. It's him. It's that man I saw as a child. I have that face saved in my memory because he spooked me so badly. I said something about it to my brother and he shrugged about it. I mentioned it to some friends and they said that was creepy, but there was no way I could have remembered something like that. I thought they might be right until the news also showed some photos of the suspect when he was younger and likely committed the murders. That was exactly the man I saw. I know it. It's changed the way I think about things. It's changed the gratitude that I feel for my life. What if he hadn't tripped on our sleds in the yard and somehow made his way into our house? My sisters and I could have been the ones on the news. Definitely dodged a bullet there. But I wonder what made him stop and not come in. Well, I guess you could have woken up everybody. Story number 2. Demons are real. I've never believed in the paranormal or supernatural. I always thought the stories about people being haunted or possessed were just stories made up for entertainment or cases of severely mentally ill patients being misunderstood by fanatical priests claiming demonic possession. I never suspected that they were actually real, but when I was 13, my naive brain would be put in its place. It was the summer of 2007. Life was good. I had a pretty normal teenage life. I had a few friends my age who lived in the same neighborhood as me, and we would do a lot of outdoor activities like hiking, mountain biking, and fishing. We lived just north of the Ozark Mountains in a nice little town in Arkansas. My father had worked very hard to give us all a good life. He came from a poor family and joined the military at 18 to better his future, and it paid off. He got a good job working on airplanes, and we moved to the country. My parents got us still on a really nice old house in the village. It was a nice little community built into the woods, which had golf courses, private lakes, and trails, and its own shopping center with a Harps and a couple of restaurants. We were a happy, normal, middle-class family. That is, until that thing showed up and ruined our lives. There were a lot of local legends about the natives that used to inhabit the area. Supposedly, our entire community was built on top of sacred land. I used to walk the trails near my house a lot, and you could find cliffs and overhangs with Indian paintings on the walls and remnants of their civilization. I always felt bad about how they were driven from their homes by my ancestors, but I was still grateful for my home and wonderful life. The kids at school would often scare each other by telling tales of shamans summoning skinwalkers and rakes. And that to this day, they still haunt the woods at night looking for a midnight snack. I always laughed it off. Ghosts and monsters aren't real. They're just made up stories to scare kids. I always thought the ghost hunter shows were ridiculous. You wouldn't hear or see anything on camera, but the people in the show would jump at a creek in the night, and suspenseful music would play while the camera focused on empty darkness. These shows can be fun for their imagination, but the reality of paranormal entities is much more terrifying. They can tear apart families and bring your whole world crashing down. I would learn this dark reality one summer night. The air was cool. I had my window open and could hear the wind flowing through the leaves. The cicadas reverberating through the midnight woods put me in a sleepy trance. I relaxed and drifted off to sleep. In such a peaceful place, I was completely safe. I always felt one with the woods. It really is beautiful here. Cradled in the sounds of nature, I drifted deep into sleep. Then, a wave of panic. I feel every hair stand up, chills down my spine. I feel the eyes of someone on me. I can feel their sinister intent. Every fiber in me is telling me to run. There is something here that wants to kill me. No, worse. It wants to own me, to see me suffer. It has been watching me for a long time. I have been chosen. I can't breathe. Help me. Help me, I scream. Mom. I hear laughter. Not human, not a physical voice. Multiple voices of all octave, laughing at once. I can't open my eyes. I can't breathe or talk, but I see its eyes. Blue, bloodshot, bulging eyes. Huge pupils, red is filling my mind. I feel pressure. My entire body is vibrating and I feel like I'm going to explode. It then quickly shifted out of sight. It darted down the couch and into the shadows. Adrenaline hit me and I ran into my parents' room. I burst open the door, panting and covered in sweat. My parents were at first annoyed, and it was the typical thing parents do when something like this happens. But as I described every detail about my encounter, and when they saw how terrified I was, I started to see a look of unease and fear in my father's eyes. He was scared. He believed me. My father, being a devout Christian, believed in demons, and he was convinced I had just been tormented and that I was in danger. He was very serious, and I could see that he was disturbed by what had just happened. He woke up my little sister, and the whole family gathered in the living room. I wish my dad had never done what he did next. He got out his Bible and turned the pages to a verse. I don't quite remember the actual verse, but it was something about casting out demons. In the name of Jesus Christ, I command you to leave my family alone, he yelled angrily, cursing the demon. If you want one of us, take me. Leave my family alone. We sat in the living room talking well into the night, and after a while, we were all tired and went back to bed. I couldn't sleep though. I couldn't forget those eyes, its evil smile, the way it moved. It was disturbing. Fast forward a few months and things were normal. Me and my sister went back to school, and for the most part I had forgotten all about the demon. I even convinced myself it was a bad dream or even sleep paralysis, even though that was the only time sleep paralysis had ever happened to me. I went on with my life until we got the worst news I had ever heard to this day. My dad was diagnosed with a rare form of bone cancer, and it had spread. He was dying. We were devastated. I hugged my father and cried all day that day. I couldn't believe I was going to lose my dad. He was always so strong and seemed very healthy. The weird thing is, and the doctors were also puzzled, his cancer was usually only found in teenagers. It was a cancer that almost 100% of the time was only found in boys in their early teens. This shocked me and made me feel guilty. The whole experience with the demon became prominent in my mind, and I remember my father's words to the demon. I think it had its eye on me, but went after my dad instead. I wish it had taken me though. My family would be much better off today if it had. My father remained positive through his sickness. He went to chemotherapy sessions, started eating healthier, and worked out as much as he could. With his bald head and amputated leg, people would often come up to him and thank him for his service. He always laughed and said thank you because he was a veteran. However, contrary to what people thought, his condition was much worse than if he had stepped on an IED. He lived for 3 more years, even though the doctor said he had less than a year to live. He always stayed happy and positive, more for our sake than his own. But toward the end, he started to slowly deteriorate. It was awful. I couldn't do anything to help him. The man I looked up to, who protected us, who I always thought as invincible, was crumbling before me. He lost all his weight and started sleeping on the couch to not disturb my mom. He was so sick. He suffered so much. I would hear his death rattles and moans and want nothing more than to help him in any way I could. Something that disturbs me so much to this day is that I started to realize something. He more and more resembled the demon. He was getting so thin he looked like a skeleton, and he had very blue eyes. Sometimes he would just look at me from the couch and I would get chills. The demon had been mocking me, imitating what he would do to my father while viciously smiling, as if it was funny. This enrages me. How could something be so vile, so purely evil? My poor father soon died and left us a broken family. My mother fell into a deep depression. I looked after my little sister, tried to be the best father figure I could be, even though I was a poor substitute. We fell behind on the bills and the bank foreclosed our house. We lost everything. The next handful of years were a struggle, but now I'm an adult and I have gotten some sort of a stable life. I recently figured out why my father was so shaken that night and didn't just blow it off as a bad dream. I visited my sister recently and we started talking about ghosts and the paranormal. I asked if she had ever seen anything like that, and she hesitated for a second, but then told me, and what she said gave me chills. She was very young the night I saw the demon and had largely forgotten that night, but she told me she used to see a shadowy man standing next to the end of her bed. He had a skull for a face. Demons are real. Okay, so I don't want to discount anybody's beliefs at all, but I wonder if maybe this is like his way of coping with his father's death. Because even though like that form of bone cancer is rare, it's obviously, I'm pretty sure he's not the only person as an adult who's gotten it. I don't know. I'm not sure if I believe in, demons and all that. I lean more toward being agnostic when it comes to that type of thing. However, I wouldn't take any chances. Just say that, just in case. Next story, the shadow thing. When I was 3 or 4, I was watching some Simpsons episode when at the end of the episode, I decided to wait for my mom who was teaching downstairs. So I sat on the 3rd or 4th highest stair to wait for her. Something around 2 to 5 minutes go by and something makes me want to turn around. When I turn around, I see some sort of shadow thing walking from the bathroom. It was tall and looked like it had some sort of hood over its head. I was so scared to move, I froze in place. I was scared if I moved or spoke even a little bit, it would attack me. It slowly walked from the bathroom to the door where my grandmother was staying at the time. Over the years, I've had much scarier encounters and they've thankfully stopped. Though this was my first sighting, I might make posts about the other ones. I feel like we've all seen like a shadowy figure in our house. I know I did a lot as a kid. That's why even though I say I lean more toward being agnostic when it comes to, religious beliefs, I don't know. Next story. Was her sleep paralysis real? I know a lot of people around where I live. Some have experiences, some don't. But this was a shocking and terrifying experience a woman had. I will now shift to her POV writing the story. I recently moved to a village. It's a beautiful place to live, but what happened here is horrible. I'm a woman who has sleep paralysis a lot and it's no fun experience. But getting that out of the way, I moved into a house on the lake. It was quite a beautiful view, seeing the river. I lived there for a few weeks and nothing happened. I lived normally and made friends in the town. Life seemed perfect. Then, one night, I woke up and couldn't move. This didn't seem alarming as I regularly experienced sleep paralysis. After a few minutes, I looked at the window and saw a boy. He had an unusually large grin that seemed full of evil. As I was paralyzed, I couldn't react. Then the figure walked toward the door. I heard it open and then wet footsteps. The boy entered my room and placed this huge grin on my face. What? How do you place your grin on somebody's face? Then I snapped out of paralysis and slept again. When I woke up, I stepped on the floor and found that there were wet footprints. I got chills. I got dressed and drove to town. I talked to people and they told me something tragic. Long ago, a group of friends were playing near the river. As a joke, one of the friends pushed a boy into the river and he sunk to the bottom. Villagers dived in to save the boy, but they were too late. They found him sitting on a rock, eyes cloudy, mouth open. It was like he sat there and waited to drown. People say that his ghost will grab you by the ankle and pull you into the watery grave. I freaked the F out. I tried to sell the house, but I could not because it is famous for being haunted. I just hope I can get out of this place. I feel so sorry for her. This is why I'm always researching on a house before I buy it. Let me know what you think and follow for more scary stories. And that is kind of creepy. And so as a person who does suffer from sleep paralysis from time to time, it is horrifying. I've never had any like demonic experiences as far as I can remember, but I have had dreams where I was like, there was one I was paralyzed and like in the paralysis dream, I was in a tub and I was like sinking down into the water and I couldn't move. There was one where it felt like somebody was on top of me. Yeah, I don't know. Sleep paralysis is horrifying. That is one of the most terrifying things that you can ever experience. And luckily I haven't had any in a minute, so. Alright guys, that's gonna do it for this video. I hope you found it entertaining. Tell me down in the comments what your thoughts are about these scary stories. Which one was the most horrifying to you? For me, it was definitely the first one, but I guess because that one was like the most real. Like they literally could have died that night. As always, thanks for watching. See you guys next time, and don't forget to subscribe.